Alison. I'm the editor of Campaign Middle East. And thanks for joining us at this busy time for everyone ahead of Ramadan. Thank you all for joining. I can see there's already a lot of people flooding into the virtual room. We're going to be talking about Ramadan today, and which is probably top of everybody's mind right now. Campaign, by the way, has plenty on Ramadan in our latest issue, so mandatory plug for my own magazine there. Do pick up the magazine. Also check it out on the website, on social. We just got our blue tick on Instagram, so I'm incredibly proud of that. Already sent my mum a screen grab of that. Also, before we start, I'd like to thank our sponsors and our partners who make these events possible. So thank you to MMS, that's NBC Media Solutions. As anybody who is watching media in the region absolutely knows, this is the newly created commercial arm of NBC, which is focused on connecting brands and people with premium content. And we're going to be hearing more from them as we go on. Thank you also to Huawei Video, which is the video on demand streaming platform by Huawei. The Huawei Video App provides a curated selection of series, short videos, documentaries, videos about sports and movies. It's got a library there of more than 10,000 hours of Arabic content as well. So it's not just, so it's a pretty local, a lot of local content, millions of videos and more than 10,000 hours of global content. So I'm going to introduce you to the first panel, which I have the pleasure of hosting. Today I'm joined by Faisal Al-Saad, who is the General Manager of Marketing, Communication, Consumer Business Unit at STC. I'm also joined by Ryan Hajar, who is Client Partnership Director at MMS, NBC Media Solutions. And I'm joined by Razmik Kalajian. So did I spell it? Good, that looks like I got there. Who's the Managing Director, KSA at Mindshare. So general outline of our panel is we're going to be looking at what brands are up to during Ramadan. And I think that one of the things that I'm particularly excited about is that we've got a really good sort of Saudi focus here. We've got a Saudi media company, we've got a Saudi head of a Saudi media agency, and we've got one of the biggest, most important clients in Saudi. So I think this is going to be a really interesting panel, and I'm going to stop waffling now and kick off immediately by saying, slightly unusual, but when do you expect to be busiest in Ramadan? In terms of, Ramadan is a month long. I know that everybody's quite busy now, but when are the most important times for media in terms of reaching consumers, in terms of seeing consumers sort of react to that reach with increased spend? I've read that there are two peaks during Ramadan, one just before Ramadan begins, and also the week, maybe the 10 days before Eid. I don't know whether you agree with this, and sort of what other trends do you expect? So maybe, well, first of all, Faisal, you're an old hand in this game. When do you, from a brand point of view, when are you busiest during Ramadan?
Okay, welcome everyone. Pleasure to be here. Thank you, Austin. Well, first thing to consider is the shift in the Hijri calendar. So there is the pattern of salary week that shifts every year for 11 days, and you have to keep an eye on this. So it depends on your industry. For example, if you're a utility company, then you would see spikes during the salary week, regardless, is it the first week, second week, or the fourth week of Ramadan? It shifts every single year, right? But if you are in the industry, for example, of FMCG, you would realize that the busiest week is actually the one before Ramadan. That's why we see more spending for FMCG, 10 days prior to Ramadan. So that's something to keep in mind. For other industries, for example, shopping, usually you see it shifts toward the last 2 weeks because they prepare for Eid and whatever, and that's consumer behavior, which I believe we're going to discuss in your next panel. So brands do focus depending on their industry and depending on salary week as well, because the purchasing power would increase according to that.
Now, Ryan, you've got I think you've got a particular focus at MMS on FMCGs and consumer packaged goods. So presumably, the busiest time for your clients there is the week before Ramadan, or am I wrong?
No, you're right. So You can sort of split Ramadan in the pre-Ramadan for the CPGs and FMCGs, but then I mean the month of Ramadan is also extremely crucial because there's continuous purchases that happen throughout. You can assume that yes, there are bulk buys that happen before Ramadan starts on the main essential products if you want, but then on a continuous basis there are purchases that continue to happen, such as dairy products, perishable products that need to be purchased on a more frequent basis, if you want. The other thing as well from the specific vertical is you look at products like chocolate, you look at products like more on the gifting side, that's more consumed if you want during Ramadan as it goes on. And to Faisal's point, towards the end, there is gifting that happens a lot when it comes to specific products. So it's more or less split if you want throughout the spectrum of 2 weeks before Ramadan and throughout Ramadan, depending on the products and the various objectives of the clients.
So how long what do you treat as Ramadan? As sort of as professional marketers, do you think of Ramadan in terms of the month of Ramadan, or do you see it as longer than that? I mean, Ryan, it sounds like you're saying that it's a 6 week, that Ramadan is possibly 6 weeks. It's from 2 weeks before, or does it go on even longer than that?
So the thing is, once Eid comes into play, obviously family dynamics change. People, I mean, put COVID aside, but the usual transition is people travel, people get to go to places and things like that. Now, obviously, with COVID coming in, things change in terms of consumer behavior, in terms of outings and things like that. But yeah, it is safe to assume that pre-Ramadan is an important season, and what we try to do as well pre-Ramadan is obviously push investments from specific clients and advertisers to make sure that they're reaching the consumers before that start of Ramadan. Now, post-Ramadan is a different challenge as well when it comes, because predominantly it has always been at the time where it was closer to summer, where viewership usually tends to dip. Now, as we move away from summer, there's a lot more content that we have available to make sure that we prolong, if you want, that viewership trend when it comes to TV. Even post-Eid, which we haven't seen, if you want, in the past couple of years, just because it's always been closer to the summer period. So this year will be the first time where we even try to prolong that viewership, that high viewership trend, if you want, post-Ramadan, right after Eid is over.
Interesting. And Razmik, I'm going to sort of go to you for a sort of a big sort of overview, really, of last year. How did people? I think we could all agree that last year was possibly not exactly like other Ramadans. So how did you see people shift their, advertisers shift their spend around, sort of as a result of COVID, or particularly as a result of other things as well? As Ryan said, the summer Ramadan sort of conjunction.
Yeah, no, last year was, COVID was almost probably about 7-8 weeks old. So it was really at the height of what COVID was doing to cities, to countries around the world. So obviously there was the fact that there was a massive shift, obviously, because at the time there were some basic restrictions that started escalating as it went along, and during Ramadan, if I remember correctly, there was almost quite a significant movement that was taking place. So obviously, out of home became a lot less important, and naturally, when people are in lockdown or sitting at home, you tend to watch TV more. You're more engaged on social and on other digital platforms.
Just go back in quickly and say, did the spend actually rise on things like social and or did you see clients spending more on things like social and TV, or because I know that there was a bit of that panic at the start of COVID when people sort of started to cut their spend, but did it actually go up on the ones that people were using more?
I mean, in some instances, yes, probably not. I mean, it's sector specific. And it's not, you cannot just take a general view of what happened across the industry. But we definitely saw, I mean, the spike in TV audiences was so clear. And it represented a clear opportunity for advertisers to jump on that, especially if people who have or clients who have the content that exists that they can make use of. So that there was definite, and there was a shift. I wouldn't say it was an increase or a massive spike in terms of making bigger investments or bigger bets, but more so as this is the current situation. How agile are we in order to make the best use of that situation to clients? So I think that was particularly unique about last year.
How did you, Faisal, from a brand point of view, how agile were you guys, and how agile were your agencies?
Okay, well, of course, it was an unprecedented situation, so we had to learn on the go, us and our agencies. And the first thing you would have tried as a client is to see the flexibility with your annual deals, for example, right? Because now you want to shift resources towards the channels that you would feel will generate the better ROI during such times. And it takes a very strong agency to represent you with pull you away from such commitments, right? To change your media mix during a very short period of time. What happened with us, and let me talk, specifically about our experience, is that we had to shift the spend from outdoor towards TV and digital, and we had to increase the spend as well, the total spending, because you had to anticipate any drops in consumer behavior that you are not aware of, again, which is something that we had to learn on the go. I mean, it's not like we're getting a virus every single year. So we had to put that, margin error into our minds and overspend just in case, because at the end of the day, you want to reach the objectives and the targets.
And presumably, I mean, you'd be a good person also to ask about to sort of start maybe a conversation about the effect of COVID on e-commerce and things. I mean, obviously, STC is already quite a sort of e-commerce, maybe not e-commerce led, I don't know, but you've made huge sort of steps. You've run a lot of campaigns around your e-commerce and so on, and you'd be probably at the forefront of that. How did you find that COVID affected that?
Very good question. We saw an increase in the e-commerce activities that did not stop when the lockdown stopped. It's still, on average, quadruple what we used to get pre-COVID. Yes. So, the virus works in mysterious ways. It's the best educational campaign out there. It got people attention. And to be frank, we could not have done such a thing in 3 or 4 years. The numbers would have picked up eventually and naturally, but it was a shortcut.
Razmik, did you find that sort of across wider clients that was a familiar story, or was that unique to STC?
No, it's not. It's not, and that is the beauty of it, because digital transformation was a huge subject. Everything had to be done in a sort of a condensed period of time, and we saw that change, that reality across different sectors. Probably telco is the easiest, because people are naturally inclined to make transactions online, but we've seen that across multiple categories, and that's still going. And to Faisal's point, we have seen that shift, that change that took place, whether it's telco or others, and we keep on seeing that growth still carrying on. So, and various researchers, you've seen that people are actually saying, yes, I've made a shift post-COVID, I'm going to remain with the shift. So they're not really, scaling back to the older times. And yeah, I mean, as bad as COVID is, and we've all been affected by it, but there are some pockets of opportunities that are really showing signs of transformation that I don't think we would have seen otherwise, like digital commerce and online shopping.
So what does that mean for this year that's coming up? Ryan, you've not always been with MMS. I know that you've got an agency background as well. So, did you, in your previous life as an agency man, did you see this, and do you think that it's going to carry on this year as well?
Listen, to be honest, and Faisal had a good point. Things changed drastically, and even if people had planned to drive commerce the way that it grew, I don't think it would have worked. So yeah, the virus did work in mysterious ways. We've seen, at my previous role, we've seen excessive growth on certain categories. You take CPG, they grew tremendously when it came to commerce. And I think once people got used to the convenience of driving purchases online, I mean, you don't have to get to the store, you don't have to wait in line, you don't have to get stuck in traffic. I think it just became a habit for a lot of consumers to stick to that. There's also the sense of people wanting to go to store, so it's obviously that's far from disappearing. But the trend of commerce continuing to drive will stay there. We believe that it will stay there and it will continue to grow.
How do you think this year is going to look, sort of compared to last year, in terms of, particularly in terms of sort of media plans, media spend? Do you think it's going to look like a variation? Do you think it's going to look like last year? Do you think it's going to look like the years before? Do you think it's going to be some sort of hybrid of both, or do you think it's going to be something completely different?
No, I think from a media standpoint, if we want to compare it versus last year, I think there's going to be some considerable growth, I would say, when it comes to investments. So the thing is, when you look at last Ramadan, it was already within COVID. So you had a lot of sectors that had stopped spending. You had a lot of clients that had to pause spend. And then you had the CPGs, if you want, from what we saw last year, were either flat to increasing spend. I think we're at a time now where it's safe to say that a lot of the clients that were not investing last year because of COVID have re-kicked off their marketing plans. So our expectation and our goal is to make sure that we obviously grow that share that was versus last year in terms of, if you want, overall TV investment. And to be honest, we do see that trend, if you want, happening across media, that there is a positive sentiment when it comes to investments, if you want, at least from our side of the business. So yeah, that's.
Faisal, what sort of changes are you planning from last year? Where are you sort of planning to move spend around from last year? What have you learned? Also, sort of, what have you learned from last year?
Well, I hope no competition is among your list of attendees, but we're going back to normal, to be honest. We feel it's back, to the pre-COVID situation, media related, right? We do believe outdoor has its strengths back on. We do believe TV is normal now for Ramadan. And we feel it's time to go back to normal spending, normal media mix, the things that have worked for us previously.
That's really interesting. I was expecting a more sort of, so you think that this is almost going to be, from a media spend point of view, you think that this is going to be like Ramadan 2019 sort of mix?
Exactly.
Razmik, is that is that a familiar story to you, or do you think that Faisal's unique?
No, I think we're progressively getting back to I wouldn't call it pre-COVID, probably a new normal that that's the reality of how things will come about. Yeah, to a large extent, yes, because we're still looking at, if I look at across all the portfolio of clients we're looking at, there is a sense of how can this get back to a normality, and the fact that again, it all has to do with what restrictions come about in the next week or so, and that will require all of us to think a bit more in an agile way to understand what would be the changes that we have to apply in order to maximize the output. But we will have to wait and see what local authorities in Saudi decide to do. But if I look at now versus last year, obviously it's very different than what this one. And the other thing is that it's been a year of COVID, and we sort of are more comfortable in our own skin versus what happened last year. So I think those are multiple things that comes to mind when we're thinking about this year versus last year.
You said something very interesting there that I'd like to pick up on, which is you're sort of waiting to see what restrictions are brought in and so on. And this also speaks to a bit of what Faisal said earlier about, last year everybody had to change things. You had to change contracts, you had to change plans, you probably had to change creative and things. But last year you were this came out of the blue. How much can you plan for that change? Is it possible to, our marketers, our brands having sort of different strategies depending on whether there's a full lockdown or whether there's, vaccine success, or how flexible can you be in terms of your spend, in terms of your creativity, and what tools do you have to have in place to do that? Is it just agreements with your agencies and with your brands and with your with that sort of, and with the media as well? In fact, Ryan, I might come to you on this, because I guess that there's going to be, as a media owner, a media supplier, you're going to be quite vulnerable, or possibly whatever the opposite of vulnerable is, that if suddenly, if there's a massive lockdown, I'd imagine that you'll get a lot more spend that would have gone to outdoor, or if there's, or if cases drop, then maybe outdoor spend will go there. How flexible are media like yourselves when it comes to messaging?
Well, from our aspect, we are quite flexible when it comes to a bunch of things. So, if we put COVID aside anyways, during Ramadan, it's the first week is extremely important. I would say the first 3 days is extremely important. The research gets released into the market. Agencies start obviously assessing which programs and which TV stations are doing well and which aren't, and that reshuffling has to happen. So we're ready for any changes that need to come into place to begin with from a scheduling point of view.
And you'll see that reshuffling come at that stage. It's not a case of people. It's not a case of the media plans aren't set in stone then, and you're expecting that reshuffle anyway.
In terms of within the stations, yeah, we do expect that. Just because some people or some agencies would anticipate a certain program with a certain rating, and then another program comes in and takes its place, and it's just about reshuffling or re-optimizing, if you want, the existing plan. And then in terms of the other points that you mentioned, in terms of whether there's a lockdown or not, we are also flexible in terms of obviously accommodating additional spend, depending obviously on the certain situation. That's always there. Nobody would say no to that.
Nobody's going to turn it down.
Yeah, of course not. And then if the opposite happens, as well, even if people are out and about, viewership will still exist on the TV stations, right? It's not about viewership existing only when there's lockdowns. So you look back at the previous years, Ramadan is always a time where there is high viewership and strong viewership. So we don't expect anything obviously negative from that aspect, regardless of what the measures are within the kingdom.
Razmik, are you sort of geared up to sort of change media plans, or do you think that it's going to be geared up to change them drastically, or just reshuffle them gently?
We will have to deal with it as it comes along. I cannot make those decisions at the moment. The only important thing that is out there and we need to watch out is how agile can we be working with partners, making sure to maximize the output of any ad spend. So, but whatever that decision might be, we will have to wait and see what restrictions will there be, if there is going to be. I hope. So far it doesn't look like there's much happening at the moment. But TV is set. The only factor that is that there is a question if there is a lockdown or is more restrictions is what we do with out of home, and how do we re-look into that, because from a foundation perspective, TV is always an important component when it comes to Ramadan. Similarly with digital, social, whatever platforms we choose to use. So unfortunately, I don't have the magic answer. Doesn't exist at the moment. We'll see how the restrictions come through, and then we just need to be agile with our clients, with our partners.
Have you got sort of frameworks? Have you got a more sort of flexible framework in place when it comes to sort of contracts and things? Sort of ability to change things more easily than last year. I think that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's no general rule behind that. I think we just have to take each case on its own. I mean, for example, if you look at Saudi at the moment, international, there is a list of countries where international travel is not permitted. So obviously that's an element that you need to work with your partners to figure out what is the right solution that can come out of it. But yeah, again, there will always be flexibility when there are problems. But how that pans out and how that comes across is very much a case by case.
Faisal, are you from a brand perspective? What sort of contingencies are you geared up for? How much are you going to be thinking on your feet, and how much can you plan ahead for changes and different scenarios?
Well, the way we built our strategy, especially around Ramadan, is that even without during our meetings with our agency, is that always have a plan B, especially on outdoor, because outdoor is relatively expensive in Saudi Arabia if I compare it with neighboring countries. And making such a decision to go outdoor during turbulence times is a big decision. So luckily, recently, the media domain in Saudi Arabia is shifting, and we're getting good vibes, good signs from the major suppliers who can accommodate to our changes. So if we decided to pull out from outdoor, they would find solutions for us. We don't think something will happen this Ramadan. We don't think so, hopefully, because the number of vaccinations are increasing. So regardless of the cases, vaccinations is the better KPI to take a look at. So we're not expecting a big change. The usual, rating of a show, something, a new black horse that comes on TV that you want to invest in, something like this.
So what sort of data will you be looking at as Ramadan develops? I know that Ryan said that within the first week, the TV ratings will come out. What sort of other things are you going to be looking at, either from your media, from your agencies, from your own first-party data? What sort of things are going to be influencing your tactics and your decisions during Ramadan?
Well, good. I'm not going to do any advertising for my own product, but we do have an OTT service that we can actually see the ratings and the watching behavior of people because it does contain linear TV. So we can compare that to whatever NBC shares with us. Another thing is, to be honest, is the in-mall activity. I'm a big believer in in-mall during Ramadan. People tend to go and walk in malls, be it before having the meals or before going to sleep. So that's why we invest in malls during Ramadan. It's an amazing tool.
Okay. Razmik, what sort of data are you going to be watching, and what do you wish that you'd had more of?
Look, I mean, the data is out there. You just need to figure out how to capture it. Obviously, there's a huge amount of investment that will go into television. So obviously, that is an area that we need to watch very closely. Some of our clients obviously are heavily involved, are making commitments on television. So we need to watch that investment is going in the right direction, and then we work with Ryan and his team on figuring out what would be alternative solution if things are not working. But by client, I mean, every client has his own sort of set of data points that we can look at in terms of performance, of how things are progressing, how the consumer reaction is happening. And also from a Mindshare perspective, we obviously do have our own proprietary sort of data points that we look at, whether it's a snapshot to understand what's going on, comparative to understand last year versus this year, how people are reacting. So far, I think I'm quite optimistic that this Ramadan will be as close to normality as we would like it to be. And hopefully, carry on the optimizations that needs to be constantly in place in order to drive the best value for any of the investments that we do.
Okay, and I'd like to, so while we're talking about TV, I'd like to, TV's always been the big, the sort of one of the, is it still the biggest, does it still make up most of the Ramadan spend, do you think? Or has digital overtaken it during Ramadan? Because I'm wondering how TV fits into Ramadan today and how that's changing. I mean, we hear tales of linear television is over. Everything's digital. Big screens are out. Little screens are in. Has its death been greatly exaggerated? And I think I might. I think I'll go to Ryan. Go on. Should we all give up on as the TV man in the room? Should we all give up on TV?
Who's been saying that? Who's been spreading those rumors? No, listen. It's from our perspective. I mean, we know the size and the scale of television, specifically when we're talking about NBC. I mean, we have our own data points which we look at. TV is still big. TV drives scale. TV has the reach when it comes to reaching consumers, not just across in Saudi, but across the rest of the GCC. I mean, and based on the data that we have specifically, which is within NBC, we see healthy growth. We see continuous growth as well when it comes to the amount of people we can reach. I mean, we're talking about reaching 96, 97% of households within Saudi.
Is that reached through linear TV or through your things like Shahid is your video on demand streaming service, or how are you talking? How's that reach?
So we have our own boxes, if you want, which are available across Saudi, where we're able to track. So similar, I think Faisal mentioned something within the OTT service that they have. So NBC has the same thing where we are able to track, and if you want to extrapolate, people like meter data, which is accurate, which is precise, which gives us minute by minute rating. So it also helps in terms of how we plan. We're able to track in terms of stickiness onto the content. So when people start shows, how long do they watch? And we see numbers close to 60-70% completion rates on shows, for example. We're able to track.
And again, that's on linear TV. That's
purely on linear TV. And then based on that data, this is where we extrapolate, if you want, the reach that we have. So we're talking, like I said, if you want last Ramadan specifically, NBC was reaching close to 12 million viewers on a daily basis, which is a huge number if you think about it. And this is only talking Saudi Arabia. Once you add up, obviously, the rest of the GCC markets, you're talking about incredible numbers in terms of reach. So from a linear perspective, we're extremely comfortable. We see growth. We have the content that gets the viewers back into, if you want to stay on TV. We have high retention rates. We have high loyalty when we compare previous Ramadan years to last Ramadan as well. So from a linear perspective, we're very comfortable and we're extremely happy with the data that we have and the reach that we can achieve.
And is that because TV is still such a part of the sort of Ramadan tradition? I know that there's a lot of shows that are long-running shows. There's a lot of sort of styles of shows that come out during Ramadan. And these are sort of
So yeah, I mean, Ramadan traditions we don't think are going to go away. I mean, traditionally, families gather around during iftar. Families gather around during TV time, during the iftar time, in terms of watching the shows that are out there. NBC, if you want, makes sure that the best content is available in terms of getting the best actors and so on and so forth. So from a content perspective, there's always enticing shows for people to watch and for people to interact. Now, on top of linear TV, you had mentioned Shahid as well. So Shahid is also over there in terms of complementing what is usually done on TV. So it is our catch-up service. It is consistently growing. So we're able to, if you want to attract audiences, whether they move off linear TV, we recatch them on platforms like Shahid.
And how can you sort of translate that? I'll go to, well, in fact, either Razmik or Faisal, first one sort of butt in. How can you translate that into catching your consumers from a brand advertising point of view? That's the sort of the habits, but how do you capitalize on that when you see people sort of moving perhaps between linear and onto VOD and things?
I'll go, Raz, please.
Razmik won by that much.
Look, consumers are going to be on both. I mean, that's the reality, because at the end of the day, there are some traditions that are never going to go away, and like Brian said, it's impossible. The post iftar thing where everyone sits together and gets to watch it. What we have noticed and probably with the Shahid, with the VOD proposition coming through, is that people would end up watching multiple screens, and that's they probably watch one program on television, then catch up the other show that they wanted to watch on Shahid, and so on and so, whether it's Shahid or anything else. So I think that is a reality, and then you just deal with it as it comes. At the end of the day, the fundamentals are always going to be there, solidly connecting with audiences, and it's proven. There are some things that it's proven. You don't need to think too much about it, because there's something that will deliver the product that they're offering.
Faisal, when you sort of approach TV viewers, how do you do it? Do you do it just through TV, or is there crossover with digital as well and other platforms? Other platforms are also available.
Yeah. Well, before I answer you, there is an important piece of information that we have to remind ourselves of. Is that I remember reading once a Google report that says organic views on YouTube during Ramadan, 50% of these organic, right? Okay. Go toward ads. So people naturally love to watch ads in Ramadan. And to me, and in our philosophy and in our strategy, why you have to be on TV during Ramadan? You have to. There is no way out of this. It's because of the happy moment that you're watching TV during, after iftar, just like Ras said, right? With your family. That's a happy moment. And people do discuss whatever comes on TV. Okay? So the voices in the room is usually louder than the voice coming from the TV. And it's all about this very happy moment that we want to be a part of. It's not about, how effective it is. It's not about how many spots do I get. It's about me as a brand being there in that moment. Now, and of course, digital and other mediums, just like I told you, Endemol, for example, these support my campaign eventually. But I wouldn't miss it for the world, being on TV during Ramadan. It's part of the culture. And just like Raz and Ryan said, it's going to be there hopefully forever. If it's not, it's a problem.
I love that thing you said about the TV might not be the loudest voice in the room, but it's going to be sort of leading the conversation. I guess that also means that there's going to be good sort of crossover there between the TV advertising and the sort of the social conversation that goes on, because I guess that it can also be, the loudest voice in the room might not even be the people in the room. It could be the text messages coming through. It could be you on Facebook. It could be you on Twitter, or you checking up with your friends on Snapchat. It could be you sending a TikTok. The conversations that are going on there, but you've got the sort of TV as the sort of TV can be the one that starts the conversation and things. So I guess that must mean a lot more sort of integration between the different channels as well. That a TV strategy is not just looking at at TV advertising. It's looking at the conversations around it. Is that so? Yeah. Do you find? I mean, well, in fact, we're running out of time now, so I'm going to have to sort of move on fairly quickly. And I think I'm just going to. What I'd like to finish on actually is I'd just like to ask you all for sort of one piece of advice to brands trying to. In fact, there's something that we didn't touch on, and I would, and that I wish we'd had a little more time, because I'd like to ask you about smaller brands. Obviously, STC, you're not a minnow in the advertising pond, and there is this feeling, I know, amongst smaller brands sometimes, that with huge players with massive advertising budgets, they can dominate the media, and is it even worth trying to advertise during Ramadan if you're not one of the sort of, one of the maybe the big 4 or 5 brands? So I'd just like to ask you each quickly what advice you would have for smaller brands to make an impression in Ramadan, and to actually to make their advertising worthwhile. So maybe I could go to you first, Razmik.
Yeah. So look, at the end of the day, you're talking about powerful medium. We're going to give you big volumes of reach, right? So naturally that comes at a certain cost, but there is always a solution that you can find, whether it's on digital platforms or whether it's on television, that can give solutions to brands that are not necessarily the big investors. And there are some clients we've worked with, whether if I just think of it outside the box, if you think of TV, for example, it's a food season. So if it's a food brand, there's so much that are interesting engagement opportunities that you can create with audiences. If that is that's out of their ambition, maybe there's a digitally focused area where you can you create the environment for that particular brand, that it can live in that ecosystem. Obviously, you have to be very clear in terms of the measurement, in terms of the output, in terms of what they can get out of such an activity, given the context of their competitors and what their competitors would be doing during those times. So for us, there's always a solution, but we just need to be very clear in terms of what that solution can do to clients and smaller brands, and in that larger sort of very loud, I must say, Ramadan season.
Faisal, as one of the, as I say, as one of the biggest players in the market, what advice would you give to your your competitors with maybe slightly a fraction of your budget?
Actually, no. We do live the same situation, because we do have smaller brands within STC that we have to advertise for at the end of the day. Yeah, and usually my advice to be, not only during Ramadan, by the way, even during the National Day, the Saudi National Day, because this is when every single brand shouts out, right? My advice is simple as this: start earlier than others, because people do anticipate that you will do something, or all brands will do something. So if you start earlier, you catch some of that attention, right? If you, for example, if you launch your National Day advertisement during the National Day, no one will give you any one bit of attention. If you start 10 days earlier, people will say, okay, nice. So you do have a window there.
Would this go as far as to say start earlier and finish earlier? So you're so maybe by the time National Day itself comes around, you're handing over to the bigger players, but you've already made your mark beforehand, or do you need to be there at the time as well?
Well, because if you continue spending during the National Day, your money will not speak. If you start earlier, it will speak. So smaller brands go earlier than bigger brands.
Excellent. And Ryan, over to you. What advice would you give for the the smaller players with the smaller budget? How do they make the most? And you can either look at NBC or the wider ecosystem.
Sure, no, I mean, if I look at it from an MMS lens, I mean, the good thing, what we've seen as well in my previous role, when it comes to small brands, they tend to be a bit more creative. So it's not about having the big budgets. It's not about doing the big sponsorships. It's about depending on what the objectives and KPIs are. I mean, take a cooking brand. It's about how we integrate it within a cooking show. They don't have to come in and spend millions of dollars. It's about how you drive that creativity, how you drive that engagement within the integration to attract to reach the audiences. And then overall within MMS, there are multiple solutions. It doesn't have to be the big TV budgets. The Shahid is an alternative in terms of targeting opportunities. Radio in Saudi is another thing. We didn't touch on it, but is a lot more cost effective if you want from versus a TV perspective. But my advice is just drive that creativity and not to be scared to invest. There's always ways to appear from the clutter of the big advertisers for small brands.
Thank you very much then. And we're going to have to wrap it up now. So if it only remains for me to thank you. So thank you very much, Faisal Al-Saad from STC, Ryan Hajar from MMS, and Razmik Kalajian from Mindshare. That's been really interesting. Really enjoyed the conversation about Ramadan and also with a sort of strong Saudi focus, which I think everybody will really appreciate. So thank you very much indeed, and look forward to working with you more. Brilliant.
Thank you very much, guys. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Take care.
I'm now going to hand over to, so yes, thank you so much. I'm now going to start handing over to Gulrez Alam, who is the Chief Investment and Strategy Officer at Arabi Ads. His panel is going to focus on what consumers are doing for Ramadan. Obviously, we touched on that a little bit, but Gulrez is going to go into a lot more depth and has a lot more insight on different sort of aspects of this. So nothing more for me to do than to hand over to you, Gulrez, to introduce your panel. Looking forward to this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Austin. From one interesting conversation about Ramadan to the next. Before I introduce the panel, let me actually thank the Campaign Middle East team, the entire team, Austin, Nadeem, Anusha, Stuart. I think they're doing a fantastic job of putting all of the wonderful people together in the panel. All right, I'm going to start my panel introduction with the only lady I have in the panel. So let me introduce Noha. Noha has about 15 years of experience, and she comes from one of my favorite countries, which is New Zealand. Her experience ranges from marketing to content, and she's currently leading Huawei Video Operations for 11 countries.
Hi, everybody. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Noha. Glad to have you here. Then we have Sofian. Sofian is a digital veteran in the industry. He has over 17 years of experience across agency and the client side, and is currently working as the media and CMI director for L'Oreal for the region.
Hello, guys. Nice to be here.
Nice to meet you too, Sofian. I'm glad to have you here. And finally, I have Bala. Bala has about 24 years of experience across retail, digital, and omni-channel solution, and currently working as the head of omni-channel for Landmark Group. Bala, you're still on mute.
Good afternoon, everyone. Looking forward to an interesting conversation. Look forward to you guys.
Oh, absolutely. Bala, let's make this interesting conversation for the entire audience. All right, since we're talking about Ramadan, I typically begin my panel discussion with a fun question. So let me ask all the panelists, starting with Noha. Noha, what's your first memory of Ramadan?
Oh, that's very sweet. I think it's typical for a lot of my generation to remember Fawazir. Fawazir in Ramadan was a very popular TV show. And of course, I grew up watching all the Ramadan series. So it's all about TV for me. And
that's nice.
Yeah.
All right, Sofian, what about you?
That brings me to a lot of years back when me and my brothers were kind of starting practicing Ramadan a day here and there, and then we wanted just to be part of the gang with my dad and the family. So I was synonymous to family gathering and a lot of great food.
Oh, I can imagine. Bala, what about you?
Yeah, for me, the biggest or the best experience started after I moved into Middle East, right? So I was various parts of the world, but Middle East really gave me the real true essence of Ramadan. And every year, I thoroughly enjoy this period. And also for me, Ramadan is all about, though I don't practice, fasting, but I still do, follow most of when I'm in office. So that really brings us closer to the entire feeling of our Ramadan is. So it's very exciting and interesting period.
Fantastic. Fantastic. And my original or the first memory I have of Ramadan is association with mangoes. I was growing up in India, and when I was growing up, the first Ramadan that we had was during the summertime. And unlike today, where you get the mangoes across the year, it was only specific for the summer season. And I clearly associate my memories, the first memories with Ramadan, with mangoes. Anyways, okay, let me move on to the topic that we have today, which is the changing consumer habits during the Ramadan. Let me start off with the basic. We all know the obvious part, that the consumer is spending more money and more time online during Ramadan. And given the COVID impact, it is a multiplier effect, right? So let me ask the panel, and let me start with Sufyan this time. Sufyan, for beauty segment specifically, do you see a change in the consumer habits during Ramadan?
Yes, no, definitely some obvious ones. Just from the fact that you're fasting, you get dehydrated, which means hydration and face care segment increases hugely. But then last year was a specific one because on top of Ramadan and fasting and everything else, we had as well lockdown for the UAE and most of the region as well. So we saw other categories as well changing. Things like hair color. People were starting testing at home hair coloring. So they used to go to salons, and they had to try out at home because they couldn't resort to anything else. Though drawback of that is those were growing categories, but we had dips in fragrances and makeup. People were going out a lot less, and less occasions to go out. So yeah, those categories dipped greatly. And though with Ramadan, those categories usually recover towards the end of Ramadan when it comes to Eid.
Would I be safe in saying, Sufyan, that there is a new persona that gets added during the Ramadan in terms of your targeting list?
Yeah, I mean, it's you have different personas, I guess. During Ramadan, we have sort of clubbed them into sort of four, more or less. You have somebody who's probably more spiritual, and we all are actually part of all of those. But you have, let's say, you over-index over some. So you have a spiritual person. No need to expand there. But then, what can you help that person kind of practice its religion or her religion at home? You have the person who's kind of more going to be focused on food. So how going to be doing kind of moving from the Ramadan tents to maybe this year kind of trying to be more homemade and authenticity and all this kind of jazz. Then you've got the entertainment part, entertainment lovers, we call them. We all spend and guilty at church, kind of watch series and gaming and things like that. And then we all in the last, let's say, persona is we all guilty as well of that. We all wait for or grab a good bargain. So the Ramadan shopper, and this year is going to be no different.
Fantastic. And Sufyan, I like to leave the audience with some specific numbers. So if you can provide me some rough estimates without getting into a PR issue, what is the typical uplift that you see during the Ramadan for L'Oreal? If you can provide some broad numbers.
I think it's gonna be hard for me to disclose those numbers. But what I can tell you is that we do expect quite some increase in some of the categories in the double-digit figure. But
Wow,
because L'Oreal has so many brands and so many categories, it's hard kind of to pinpoint a specific number. But yes, we are expecting back to growth on kind of year on year.
All right, thank you so much, Sufyan. Bala, you're representing one of the biggest group, for the region, right? And you yourself is responsible for omni-channel. My question to you is about consumer behavior across different channels. I mean, we all know that online is definitely increasing, but when you see the consumer behavior across different channels, do you see any significant disparities?
This year Ramadan is none like the previous years, right? Last year Ramadan was very, very soft. We're all spent in lockdown. But the good part in this year, different markets are responding differently. For example, if I take Saudi Arabia, KSA, which is one of the biggest markets for all of us, right? We see that the malls are opening up. Customers are willing to go and come back to the shopping habits. For example, Arabian malls have now allowed even during the prayer times to do billing in store, right? So that eases the pressure on people gathering in the mall at a given particular period of time. Most of the malls have announced 18 to 21 hours of trading, right? I'm just talking of the physical world and how the physical world will shape up the online world as well. But if I take Kuwait as a market, Kuwait, the curfew is after 5:30, right? The malls have to shut by 5:30. Oman, the malls have to close by 7 o'clock. So we being in an omni-channel world, and we across our leading brands have the opportunity to serve our customers 24/7. We see this as a splendid opportunity for both the channels to complement each other, and at the same time serve the customer however, whenever she wants to shop with us. So in that sense, this year there is a phenomenal movement of customers between channels. So we are seeing, and we track that at a channel level, how much our omni-channel shopper continues to grow, right? And it's growing even at the faster clip than what we've seen in the last 2 to 3 years time. So which is fantastic for us, right? So which is where we want our customers to be in. And we expect that trend to continue as well. One of the other trends we foresee is to say that typically Ramadan, the last 10 days of Ramadan is a very heavy trading period, right? We know that. But this year we expect the pre-Ramadan and the entire month of Ramadan to be a little bit more flattened. When I say that, customers know, if they wait too long, probably there is a risk of a lockdown or there is a risk of any curbs coming into play, which means that they are engaging with the brands earlier than we expect them to see. So which is, again, as a trend, it's more flattened curve rather than a steep Ramadan trading curve. That's the expectation. But I'll be happy to see a flattened curve and a spike during the last days of Ramadan.
I have a follow-up question on this, but I'll hold on to it, which is during the different, weeks of Ramadan, how do you plan the media metrics? But I'll hold on to it. But Bala, again, coming back to numbers specifically, without getting into a PR suit, any numbers that you can give for the audience about your, let's say, e-commerce business, the percentage of business which is driven online versus the traditional retail?
Today we are into double-digit revenue stream for e-commerce as overall business to our business, and which is growing at the industry rate, right? If the industry rate of CAGR of 40 to 50% growth rate, we are thereabouts. So that's what we are trending, and we see that trend not to slow down in the near future as well.
And this percentage would be similar across different markets in MENA, or it would differ from, let's say, UAE, KSA, different markets in
It's
MENA?
broadly aligned, Gulraj. It's broadly in the same direction, a few percentage points up in Saudi versus Bahrain. But if I look at the overall picture, it's broadly in the same direction.
All right. Thank you so much, Bala. I'm not going to keep the lady on hold for a long time. So, Noha, you're leading the Huawei Video operations, right? And we know that last year there was a huge increase in the entertainment consumption during Ramadan, right? And given the fact that Huawei I would say, broadly controls 30% consumers in Middle East, right? I hope that number is broadly correct. What is it that you are predicting for 2021?
I think along the lines of how Bala was describing the differences between the different countries within the region, different communities, because of the pandemic and different lockdown, it is a very, very tricky time to do marketing for Ramadan. But we effectively did, of course, as did many other in-home entertainment services, saw a huge rise in consumption numbers from the start of the pandemic all through last year. We also do note that now we're likely to see this trend stabilize as people are starting to go out a little bit more, gather with vaccinations available, as well as some even going on holiday. So it's been a bit of a double-edged sword approach from our perspective, because we are across so many different markets with different communities facing different realities. So for us, one of the big approaches has always been to offer entertainment to our users in the best form that they want to consume it. So there's been a huge growth over the past year for our app. Huawei Video actually only launched just before Ramadan last year. So we've been enhancing the offering to cater to changing customer interests. We've, of course, collaborated with multiple new partners, including the likes of Stars Play, who we've added as a app offering. We've also added over 100 linear TV channels, including the full bouquet of NBC and Rotana channels, the most popular in the region, effectively allowing our customers easy access all under the same roof to all their favorite content. Being mobile driven, entertainment on the go is really what we do best. But as mentioned, we are predicting a slow change back in some communities to regular movements out and about. So for this Ramadan, we decided to launch an amazing new feature called Replay TV, which allows our users to catch up on previously aired content from across a huge range of our live TV channels, so that they never have to worry about missing a show, with similar functionality to video on demand. Also, we've enabled casting to big screen, so families can start gathering again and watch together again. Really, we're priding ourselves on delivering what customers want using the best technology possible in a convenient manner. I think this is, you really have to be touching all you have to apply many different approaches as you're thinking about consumption this Ramadan.
All right, thank you so much, Noha. With so much of new content coming up and so much of new options for consumer to consume content, I'm assuming it's going to be a tough task for the marketers to plan the media. So let me jump back to Bala, and I know he mentioned this earlier. Bala, you said it earlier, with so many different options for the advertiser now to plan the media mix, right? And given the fact that Ramadan is the biggest event for the entire year, right? And I read a report that it was bigger than even Black Friday last year. How do you, as an advertiser, as a marketer, how do you plan, how do you change the marketing mix to make the most of the festival season?
This question becomes extremely important, considering that iOS 14 is on cards as well, right? So iOS 14 will change the way we know performance marketing. It will change our ability to understand consumers at that level of depth. But having said that, this year for us, it's a lot of test and learn quickly approach in terms of media mix and media management for us. Traditionally speaking, Ramadan is a big important element for conversion. If I look at the funnel and I say, where do I focus during Ramadan? It's great time to conversion, right? It's easy to convert customer because they're high intent shoppers in the market. But this year, considering the change in the consumer behavior and how the customers are reacted during the pandemic, we are also focusing on the upper funnel activity, where a lot of activations driving upper funnel. TikTok as a platform is gaining a lot of steam. We are seeing that that's a great platform to engage customers. The way the content and the lenses are consumed in Snap is evolving. So that's again a beautiful place to go and have a conversation with our customers. And nevertheless, influencers and it continues to grow in this market, and influencer-led marketing continues to evolve and develop. So we are taking really big steps in that direction to even shoot specific content, specific areas where we want influencers to talk, especially for how it looks on TikTok versus a Snap versus an Insta story. So it's a lot of social investments this year, and a lot of investments led towards the brand. So this is an area where we are seeing that the customers have been typically online, give me a big discount, I will shop with you, right? Has moved to say that, hey, look, I want a bit of a convenience as well. I'm here not only for a value, but for the convenience. So talking to the customers about our quick returns, delivery promise, talking to them about how they can exchange it in stores. So all builds up to the whole convenience element. So the tone we are talking to customers have changed. The approach of how we sell as a brand from a conversion led to a brand led has really been the big shifts we have made, included with the influencer led piece that we are, of course, we're working with you guys to a large degree.
I hate to do the sales plugin, but thank you so much. Happy to partner with you on that. I read an interesting report about, surprising trend about Ramadan fashion, with colorful abaya lines and theme accessories. Bala, any specific plans for Ramadan specific production?
We do have a modest range. We do have a modest edit, which we launched during Ramadan, and we have really increased the depth and the options we offer to our customers in the modest edit. So that's a range which is doing well for us. We have seen initial trends, which is done well for us, and that's the change we have made. And what our customers have told us is, though it is a festive time, they really don't want the festive lines, if you know what I mean. Black, gold, not very traditional, but a modern, modest range, and that's. Really, our design team helped us to build a fantastic collection on our side. So that's the approach we have gone for this Ramadan.
Fantastic. Great to see that the insights or consumer habits leading to backward integration of producing supply. That's great to know. All right, Sufyan, for your category, beauty, and I think you mentioned already, touched upon it a little bit, that week one is all about healthy skin and skincare. And I'm sure by the time it gets to week 4, it's all about Eid looks, right? As a brand, L'Oreal, which is consumer-centric, how do you make it, let's say, relevant for the audience? How do you make it personal, and how do you make it useful for the audience? And how do you decide the media mix?
Yes, no, I think you touched on the right thing, and the right point is how you make it useful for the consumer. Not only push advertising, but kind of bringing value to actually our consumers and our prospects. So if I want to rewind a little bit time, we used to be very heavy on TV with very, let's say, typical type of ads, problem solution, pack shot, boom, in your face, trying to compete with the rest of the crowd. Though Ramadan is very, very cluttered, as we know, a lot of categories competing, confectionery, used to have a lot of automotive, lots of things going on. So we had to scale back for a little while until we had the right execution, the right creative. So this year we back full force with a lot of surprises. We already started doing some content integration. So if I were to talk about TV, doing content integration, having segments specifically on NBC that kind of actually gives advice to our consumer. The latest one was aired yesterday on Sabah Al Khair Ya Arab on NBC. I'm sure MMS will be happy to hear that. But we have a lot more to accompany our consumers to actually help them on how to keep up with their skin and how to prepare for Eid as well as like making sure that we each of our brand keep their essence. So playing on different tones.
Fantastic. And Sufyan, you've spent so much time in this industry. So I'm going to ask you a technical question because you mentioned this. As a L'Oreal brand,
Go for it.
how do you ensure cross-device targeting as well as measurement? Because you mentioned you do TV, which is mainline. You do different formats of media. So, and I'm sure I can ask you this technical question. As L'Oreal, how do you do cross-device targeting and cross-device measurement?
All right. If I don't want to fiddle about, we try, let's say, can't really do it, but what we try is to minimize the waste. So basically, whenever when we have multiple channels going on, then we reduce the frequency of each channel. So to have an overall frequency that is sort of bearable and not to be too annoying, making sure that our reach is right. Ultimately, we are in the FMCG category, so we have to go after reach is our core KPI. Reach and penetration, those are what's going to guide us. So this is what we do in terms of cross device. Then of course, whenever we are able to, we then play on certain environment. When you are, let's say, on the DV360 environment, when you can have publishers and some YouTube, etc., then you can start doing the duplication. But between TV, Facebook, TikTok, and Google, not sure that you can really do it.
But happy to know that you're doing and you're leading this space and managing the frequency across different channels. That's fantastic to hear. All right, Noah, we all know that the consumption increases, the entertainment downloads increases, and I read a report that approximately 25% of the user which are exposed to advertising in the first 2 weeks have a higher longevity. From an advertiser perspective, and let's say for Huawei Video, how do you ensure that the advertiser continue to maximize the gain even post Ramadan? So let's say I'm an advertiser, I get a fantastic experience on Huawei Video Solutions during the Ramadan because of extra time spent by the user, but how do you ensure that this is going to continue post Ramadan?
That's a little bit of a tricky question because, of course, it's a retention game, isn't it? But at the end of the day, Huawei Video, especially from an advertising angle, is a free service. It's a pre-installed application that's available on, as you said, a huge market share across MENA region, as well as North Africa. So we've got basically an unprecedented opportunity to reach so many eyeballs during Ramadan. Of course, yes, consumption goes up, but at the end of the day, if the user experience is a good one, people will return, because TV is never going to go out of fashion, especially in the Middle East. It's all about viewership consumption behavior. That is changing, and we've all seen that over the past few years with the rise of more and more OTT platforms coming into the region and launching their services here. Huawei Video has a very interesting proposition, mixing advertiser-led free content, premium free content, as well as subscription service models under a mega aggregator model. So from an advertising perspective, certainly coming through Huawei Video, which would be through our recently launched Huawei Ads service, which is a brilliant new advertising marketplace run using programmatic technology. Users can place ads within Huawei Video App, as well as all other Huawei apps, services, and a whole range of third-party applications using all kinds of different formats. So this is certainly a hook to come in during Ramadan, where consumption is increasing. But as I said, TV is not going out of fashion here, just how we consume it.
Well, absolutely. And I have a relevant question on the TV and move to the connected TV. But I'm going to take Sufyan's opinion on this. Sufyan, there are a lot of new consumers that you acquire during Ramadan, right? I mean, various research have proven that there are a lot of first-time customers that brands acquire. Do you have a separate section for these guys, or do you, how do you manage these new or the first customers during the Ramadan, and how do you ensure the longevity of these customers post-Ramadan?
Yeah, I think the key then here is data, really, is to be able to nail them down, to be able to identify them. As I said, L'Oreal is a brand portfolio, so we have brands that are distributed through Carrefour, and then we have the luxury brands that are in Harvey Nichols, where we have even freestanding stores where we own the stores, etc., and we can control that journey, or we can capture that information. So with the latter, CRM is probably the key, and CRM can take many forms. It can be email, it can be SMS, it can be as well just online with audiences. Being able to guide them through the brand discovery, trying to retain them, and then push them for a second, third purchase, etc. So that's kind of a loyalty program we're going to put together. Yeah.
Fantastic. And Sufyan, have you invested in a particular CDP or technology like that? Or is the loyalty platform which platforms take over?
We were about to acquire, we were on about to get the Google audience, but then they deprecated it. And to be honest, we looked into DMPs, CDPs, etc. But for what we do with the data and the information, honestly, Google Analytics and a bit of DV360 are kind of data or audience holders light that are fair enough, honestly, for the what we do with that. I don't see the need so far yet for us to kind of expand and go further.
All right, thank you so much, Sufyan. That's helpful. Bala, there is, you have to talk about COVID and post-COVID, or let's say the current scenario. There's no panel discussion without it. For a brand like yours, we figured out new consumer insights, which is around convenience, which is around security, which is around online shopping. For Landmark Group, how are you adapting for this Ramadan 2021, given these new consumer insights?
Yeah, unfortunately for us, right? We had made the investment about 3 to 4 years ago, with or without the COVID. So, as a group, we had invested heavily into building the omni-channel proposition. We invested heavily into technology, into building our individual website, apps, and all the necessary digital infrastructure. So when COVID did happen last year, I think we were in a privileged position to take advantage with the infrastructure we had developed. But nonetheless, what got stretched was our fulfillment infrastructure. So that was definitely stretched to its limit. And having said that, that also gave us a view of where it can go to and what is the next step of infrastructure that we need to build in to meet the end-to-end needs of the customer. It's total, right? So it's not only the size, but your fulfillment experience is extremely critical in delivering a great customer value proposition. So in that sense, we are only accelerating on the building blocks that we have already set out in the last 3-4 years, and now in a position to really take it forward to the next level. So that's where our journey is currently.
And kudos to you, Bala. I mean, you've done a fantastic job in digital transformation of the group, so that's fantastic. All right, I know we are running out of time, but before I move on to my last section, and my audience knows that last section is around rapid fire, but one line advice to your fellow marketers in terms of how do you adapt your marketing strategies for Ramadan. Let me start with Bala.
So for me, it's true to be your brand. Right? One line is true to be your brand. And the next line is to follow the latest trends, especially when you're a small brand. Look at the latest, what is trending hashtags, what is the social, handles which is coming in. It's an opportunity where the small brands can be nimble and adapt to, which someone like us could find it difficult to move as quick as it's required.
Fantastic. Noha?
I would say probably diversifying your portfolio as much as possible, given the uncertain times that we live in. Change is coming, and it's best to kind of cover as many patches as you can with different strategies that work well within different segments of the audience.
Fantastic. So follow the trend and diversify. Sufyan?
Yeah, don't go dark. Basically, continue your ad spending. I think there are quite a few studies that correlate, share of voice with your market share. So we know it is very expensive to advertise in Ramadan because it's crowded. So find the channel where you can have kind of your voice heard, where you're most relevant.
Fantastic. Don't go dark and continue advertising and spending because you're going to make the most of it. Thank you so much. All right. I know Bala has a hard stop at the round of clock. So let me start the rapid fire question round with Bala. And advice to the panel, guys, give me your unapologetic, non-diplomatic answer. And for the audience, this is your chance to know the panel up close and personal. Bala, are you ready?
I will try my best.
All right. Fantastic. I'm looking for one-line answers largely. Your take on programmatic advertising for e-commerce specifically?
It's a must to have.
Fantastic. First, advertising dollars to Google, Facebook, YouTube, OTT, programmatic, or any other channel. And remember, Noah is on the call, on the panel.
I'll see all of them.
No, you have to pick one. The first advertising dollar. You're being diplomatic, man.
Okay, just repeat the question. Google? What you said, Google?
Your first advertising dollar to Google, Facebook, YouTube, OTT, which is the video apps, programmatic, or any other channel?
Facebook.
All right, that's fair. Bala, your one-line take on influencer marketing-driven e-commerce.
This market is absolutely on high octane in that regard.
Fantastic. If given a chance, would you invest in a CDP for customizing communication and understanding consumer, or a better analytics platform?
CDP is on cards for us.
Oh, fantastic. And your bet on one technology, innovation, disruption that will have a big influence in the coming time on the e-commerce industry?
Closer connection to the physical world.
Very nice. All right, choose one. E-commerce through marketplace or direct to consumer?
Direct to consumer.
Very good. Digital for performance advertising or brand building?
Both.
Advertising through cookies or device IDs as the unique identifier?
Device IDs are no more, right? With iOS. So I think it will be cookies.
IDFA is not there, but yeah, Google is there. All right. And for your specific industry, cash on delivery or digital payments?
Digital payments.
Fantastic. And last question to you, Bala. Digital disruption ideas to come from larger giants, which has huge budgets, or the new age companies?
New age.
Glad to know that. And thank you so much, Bala. That it was fantastic to have you in the panel. I know you have to rush, but thank you so much once again.
Thank you very much, Manas. It was great talking to you guys. Thanks to the rest of the panelists as well. Thank you.
All right, I move on to Sofian. Sofian, all the best. What percentage of your traffic comes from web versus app for the region?
From where, sorry?
What percentage of your traffic, not sales, but just the traffic, comes from web versus the apps? I know you have a lot of different apps, maybe not transaction driven, but
we have zero apps. Actually, we have zero apps, so 100%. We killed all our apps.
All right. I can say that's a tricky one. Okay. For L'Oreal, e-commerce through marketplaces or direct to consumer?
Direct to consumer.
Okay. According
even
to you,
even if the other one represents more.
It always does because of the marketplaces, but yeah. All right. According to you, what's the biggest challenge for online retailers today in the Middle East?
Differentiation and experience. User experience and differentiation.
Very well. All right. Future of programmatic advertising in the Middle East.
Future advertising in the Middle East, I'd say O+O, online plus offline.
No, I was specifically asking for programmatic.
Programmatic?
I was specifically asking for programmatic.
Okay, then integration of multiple channels, so VOD, in-mall, billboards, etc. Yeah.
Very nice. I'm going to surely connect with you on different topic, which is around connected TVs, but let me move on with the rapid fire. You have to choose one, agency life or the client side?
Client side all the way in this region, unfortunately, even though I've been agency side in other regions.
That's why I'm asking you this. All right. Your most important metric for digital advertising, CPM, CPE, CPA, or any other metric?
Revenue or ROAS. Now it's the new buzzword, return on ad spend. Everybody seems to have discovered that.
It's actually quite an old concept, but yeah, we are really
exactly. Yeah.
All right. Okay. First advertising dollar to Google, Facebook, YouTube, OTT,
Google.
or programmatic? Fair enough. And final question. If you were not doing what you're doing today, what would you be doing?
I'll be probably car mechanic or something like that. I'm a petrol head, so anything to do with with cars.
Oh, fantastic! Good to know that.
Well,
fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sofian. That was
Pleasure.
great to know. All right, I started the discussion with the lady, and I'm going to end the discussion with Noha. So Noha, all the best for your rapid fire.
Go easy though. Go easy.
I will. which is the most surprising trend that came out of COVID for you?
Surprising trend came out of COVID. I guess maybe the spirituality angle around Ramadan last year, where people were gathering to have iftar on Zoom.
That's correct. That was quite surprising. All right, future of streaming apps, especially video streaming apps in the region, and how many do you expect, let's say, 3 years down the line?
Well, we are expecting some of the big international players to come into the region, of course, the likes of Disney Plus, HBO Max, and others. So it may end up being quite, you know, a crowded marketplace.
Any numbers that you can throw?
No.
All right. Future of shoppable content on OTT platforms. You know, you can shop directly from the video platforms. You click, do you like the dress? You like the outfit? You click on buy on it.
Oh, I love that.
Do you think that's going to
yes.
come to the region?
Yes, technology is already out there, so it's just a matter of time. And you see a dress worn by your favorite presenter or your favorite actress, you can just ping your companion app to buy it.
That's correct. All right, your bet on one technology innovation or disruption that will have a big influence on the e-commerce.
5G, baby.
That's true, absolutely. All right, choose one. Your favorite SWOT app. Your favorite SWOT app. Netflix, Amazon Prime, Shahid, or any other?
I can't plug my own. At the moment, really, I'm watching. At the moment, it's Amazon Prime, mainly because of the great library content that they've online.
Totally. All right. Bigger revenue potential is AVOD or SVOD?
Oh, that's a tricky one. I would say AVOD in this market.
All right. OTT specific video content or TV content that gets adapted on the OTT?
Again, a very tricky one, but TV content already has a huge following, so that I would vote for that.
All right. Your personal preference, short format video content or the long format?
Long format, all the way. Well produced.
All right. And my last question to you. Listen to this carefully. Ad spend efficiency on Huawei Video versus Huawei Ads.
Or you can only get to Huawei Video if you go through Huawei Ads. So.
But okay, that's been diplomatic. But I know you can choose different ones. All right. Thank you so much, Noha and Sofyan. That was a pleasure talking to you, and I'm sure the audience got a lot of insights. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Back to Austin.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks a lot for that. Thanks a lot, Gulrez, Sofyan, Bala, who's in absentia, and Noha. That was great. That was really interesting. I really enjoyed both those conversations, this one and the last one. And time for my own shameless plug to say that you can catch up on more conversations like this on Campaign and on our many different platforms, and the many platforms that our speakers were on. We're at Campaign at the moment. We're in fact currently working on a guide to Saudi Arabia. So do keep an eye out for that. And also, if you know any great little boutique Saudi agencies, any sort of hidden gems that marketers looking at Saudi should know, do get in touch. I'm really sort of looking out for sort of on the ground knowledge. We're also going to have information and things there. Yeah, lots more there as well, especially on, I mean, as I say, recently a lot of stuff on Ramadan, which is what we've been discussing just now. Thanks again to our sponsors. Noha, thank you from Huawei Video, which is, well, as we all know, even better now, is the video on demand streaming platform by Huawei. It's got short videos, documentaries, videos about sports, movies, more than 10,000 hours of Arabic, millions of videos, loads of global content. So something for everyone there. And thanks also to MMS, that's NBC Media Solutions, which I think everybody should know now. There'll be a quiz afterwards, which is the newly created commercial arm of NBC, focusing on connecting brands and people with premium content. So you guys make these conversations possible and really help us sort of come together, pull a great audience in, really sort of help raise the bar. So thanks a lot to you guys. It really means a lot to us and to the industry. Thanks to all our speakers, all of you guys, and on the panel before. And I'm really looking forward to seeing all of you guys around, keeping the conversation going. I'm now going to borrow a quick tip from one of our earlier speakers about getting your messaging in earlier. And I want to be the first to wish you all Ramadan Kareem. So thank you very much, and I'll see you at the next one. Excellent. Thanks, guys. That was amazing.
Thank you so much, Austin.
See you soon, audience.